less sexy position, but important, obviously. Offensive linemen, specifically offensive tackles, is what we're gonna try to focus on. 'Cause that's the main offensive lineman that people focus, quote unquote, more important than the other ones. So I really have like a top three, and then I'll kind of do an honorable mention as well. Do you want me to start off? I don't mind starting off again if you want me to.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so number three. Okay, so let me say this. Okay, so my number three, and I know he was hurt, and there's kind of a big asterisk next to him. Walker Little, Stanford, and I think there's a lot of mystery around him because he hasn't played football in 2 years. He sat out last year due to COVID, and the year before that, he played his first game and tore his ACL. But that first year, which I believe was his freshman year, the year before that, it's basically 3 years ago almost. He was the number one overall recruit in his class, first of all, which says a lot, and he definitely played like it at Stanford. I'm guessing as a freshman. And like I just the way he was trending, he would have definitely given my number one guy his run for his money. And so it just depends on how teams feel about the medicals. Because once again, he hasn't played football in 2 years, so you have to be kind of comfortable with that. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't go in the first round, but I personally believe he's a first round talent. And maybe a team like Kansas City could grab him. They need a tackle, and maybe they can afford to give him a few weeks to ease him in if he, still not really in football shape or back on track in football. But regardless, he's I mean he's really special. I mean, pass game, run game, he could do it all. I mean, if there was one weakness, not amazing at the run game. He tends to overextend a bit, but once again, especially in the NFL, they can focus on that. They can teach that and correct that. But yes, so Walker Little, Stanford would be my third. Now, if you told me you can't pick him because of all that question marks, the guy that was in consideration was, and this is really tough too, Rashawn Slater, just because, and he's more of a projection. He has good size. I feel like he has solid enough feet, but I feel like he didn't. And I know he had the good game against Chase Young. I think a year before Chase went out, but other than that, never really. He's good, but he never dominates. And he should have. There's some games where he should have dominated. The guy opposite of him, especially with a guy of his size and skill. Like he's got all the physicals. It's just I'm not sure if it's a mentality thing or maybe it was also could be what Penn State asked him to do. But he just didn't overly impress me or wow me. But I see why he's a first round tackle. He may be better at guard. That may be where he's better at. But well, it depends on what team gets him. But a little raw in my eyes. I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to do one honorable, but the other honorable that pushed that spot was Elijah Vera Tucker from USC. He was great at pass protection. But he's probably going to be a guard in the NFL, but he could be a tackle. But he's a great pass protector, not great run protector. He's not real physical in regards to that. So I think that was important to note. But if I had to pick between the two, I picked Rashaan Slater just off of versatility and projection. But anyways, Walker Little would be my number three. Or he's number three in my heart. So yeah, I'm sorry that took a little long, but regardless, that's my three. What is your numero three, John?
Well, first off, my honorable mention, which this isn't necessarily like I'm considering at number four, because honestly, I didn't do a ton of research into the tackles
Tackles
outside of my top three.
is also tough because it's kind of like
Yeah,
running back. It's like sometimes, especially in college, they don't even get to block a guy because it's a screen pass and they just get off the ball and plays over.
right. But this is a guy who I think is an interesting prospect for a lot of reasons, and another guy who I've seen a lot of him playing, so I can actually comment on him. And once again, not a guy that I consider my fourth guy, but just an honorable mention of someone who I want to bring up is Sam Cosmi from Texas. The reason I bring him up is because currently, at least, he's listed as a tackle, and that's what he's probably going to get drafted as. But I think he'd be a really interesting prospect at guard because I think that the athleticism that he has, the talent that he has, I think he could be a solid tackle in the league, but I think he has the ceiling to be like a Pro Bowl level guard in the NFL. If everything pans out, obviously. So that's just an honorable mention of a guy that I want to bring up, who I think I would like to see the switch to guard, and I think it depends on where he gets drafted to, because if he gets to a team that's really needing a tackle and he develops there and that's where he plays, that's where he plays. But if he gets to a team that's maybe already a little more established, maybe they swing him inside, that's where he kind of finds his spot. and then there you go. But my number three, which I think it's interesting that you left him off, is Mr. Rashawn Slater, which also, once again, might be a little surprising that I think both of us have him lower than most people would consider. Most people say that he's the number two prospect. Um, to me, once again, really solid, when it comes to athleticism. I mean, he's a monster of an athletic freak at an offensive line position. Um, but I do think there's just sort of that question of like, okay, what is his actual ceiling at tackle versus, because once again, sort of like Sam Cosmi, I think he could be way better at guard because of that athleticism that he does have. Because in that spot, he can utilize it a lot better when it comes to speed on some of these, you know, zone blocking schemes or pulling or whatever it is. Like he can use that speed, that agility, those things that he's really strong at, um, when it comes to, being a guard. To whereas a tackle, he maybe can't use it as much. And some of the more tackle specific things, especially if you're going to play left tackle, I am a little concerned about, especially since in college, most of his playing time was actually at right tackle. He did play some, I think it was like maybe 300 snaps at left tackle, but we just haven't seen enough of him there for me to truly feel comfortable, taking him in the top 15 as my franchise left tackle. So that's why I have him as my number three. I still think he's probably a first round prospect because offensive line, one of the most important positions in football. And so offensive linemen, they're just going to go really highly. My number two, which I imagine you might have this guy on here actually since you left Slater off, is Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. Um, to me, it's just the power that I saw from him was really impressive. When he, put his hands on people and he punched out and reached out and just, pushed back the defensive lineman, it felt like there was an immense amount of force behind that was noticeable. That, a lot of when you're facing a lot of these big defensive linemen, you don't really necessarily see that, but with him, it felt like there was like a punch behind it. So I was really impressed by that. Also, one of the critiques for him is that he didn't necessarily run a pro style offense, which at Virginia Tech, like that's the school that he's at. That's where you are. You run the plays that are put in front of you. So I don't blame him a ton on there, but it is a critique that people do have of, okay, we haven't necessarily seen him run a lot of specific schemes that you're going to see in the league. But I think just out of those physical attributes that I did see, that power, that strength, and the technique that he did have, and the fact that I think it was this last year, he had the second highest overall grade we have ever seen from a Power Five tackle, which was 95.6. And that was because he allowed 0 sacks and 0 quarterback hits on the entire season. So, I mean, really impressive. Like I said, I think that he's the more prototypical tackle that I'd feel more comfortable building around. And I think that, like I said, the one thing that you can really critique him on is the lack of schemes that he has played in. But that's a teachable thing. Like that's not something that's gonna hold him back from potentially getting better as long as he has the work ethic and all the things that check in the boxes when it comes to the IQ, all this kind of stuff. He can learn those.
Yeah, so uh, this isn't as very suspenseful, but yeah, I have Christian Darrisaw number two. A lot. I mean, I really can't really say much more than what you said. If he gets his hands on you in the run game, or if you're trying to overpower him, you're gonna lose. I mean, at least in college, though, he never really lost. Like you meant, like you just said that stat. I didn't even know that, but it's right from what I saw. Um, I mean, just yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for number guy at number one, I feel like it's a kind of common threes is we're getting a lot of really good guys. It's a lot of just I want to say generational because I'm going to jinx the draft class, but a lot of really good guys at one, and it's a shame because a guy like Christian Darrisaw too. He would have been number one in most. He would definitely would have been in that conversation if he came out in last year's class. But yeah, only real weakness. I mean, you hit on all his positives. Only real weakness I felt maybe just needs to get a little bit better with his feet. But once again, that's a teachable thing, and that may be a scheme thing where he wasn't asked to do or even taught those things at Virginia Tech. So size wise, ability wise, athletically, he checks all the boxes. And I'm comfortable enough to put him at number two. Unfortunately, But hey, I mean, any team that ends up with him, I still think you're going to be pretty happy. But not as happy as you'll be if you get number one, Penei Sewell out of Oregon. Surprise, surprise. I mean, what what can he do? It's just he can he can do all the things in the run blocking. I mean, he can move to the next level. He's surprisingly very quick for a guy his size. I know his arms weren't, but regardless, kind of like Darrisaw. I mean, never really lost a battle. I mean, if anything, it was a stalemate, which as an offensive lineman, that's really what you want. I know people are going to say, maybe competition wasn't great in the Pac-12, but I mean, I think it'll translate regardless. I really don't have any concerns. I don't know what more to say about Penei Sewell, other than I'm pretty sure if the Bengals don't get him at 5 and they get a skill position, I would be upset if I was Joe Burrow, but who knows? Regardless, yeah, even if Walker Little was fully healthy and there wasn't any doubts about his medicals and stuff like that, I still think in my heart of hearts I would have put Penei Sewell would still be the number one tackle. But yeah, regardless, I mean this is Joe, and hopefully I don't jinx it, but this is like Joe Thomas, um, Andrew Whitworth kind of vibes. We're getting like in recent years like Ronnie Stanley. This is a guy that can do everything athletically that you want him to, at the tackle position. He's not gonna have any problems. So he is my number one. John, are you gonna shock us, or are we on the same page here too?
Uh, Not gonna shock you. Same page. I Penei Sewell. I mean, just listing off some of like the impressive things about him. Like I said with Darrisaw, he just had the second highest graded season we've ever seen out of a tackle. Penei Sewell's the guy who beat him out. He's the one who had the highest graded season ever. That was 2019. Also, 0 sacks, 0 QB hits. I don't know how many quarterback hurries. It had to be less than 6 because that's what Darrisaw had, and he was higher graded than him. So just an absolute beast, pure dominance. And when you watch him play, the one thing that stands out to me is how fluid his movement is. It just looks so easy for him to move and adjust, and no matter what the opposing defense throws at him, that he works with it. Whether that comes to the run game and all of a sudden his matchup has changed or stunts or whatever's happening, he moves really easily, and he's doing that at 330 pounds, which is the heaviest I believe out of any offensive lineman in this draft. So not only is he the biggest, but he's also he just makes it look so easy, and he was just so dominant. It truly wasn't even like fun to watch the matchups that he was in because he handled them. There was no issues that he had with anybody he faced in college. Um, and the one thing that I think helps him out too is that I mean, he was blocking for Justin Herbert at Oregon, and we saw how NFL ready Justin Herbert was. So we can only imagine, his franchise left tackle in college, how ready he's going to be for whatever team drafts him. I don't want to get too deep into our mock drafts, but I absolutely agree with you. If the Bengals don't take him, no matter who they get, I know skill positions are always so exciting, um, but he's just so dominant that it would be a shame after your quarterback just got a season-ending injury to not take one of the most dominant offensive line prospects we have seen probably since Quentin Nelson.
Yeah, and he plays tackle, which I think some would say is
Yep.
is a premium position. So, um, yeah, so there it is. Only other person I really want to mention too, Landon Dickerson. Yeah, I didn't really mention him because he doesn't play tackle. He could play guard, but I mean he's a lock for a starting center in the NFL. I think he can be. Dominant at the point of attack, and he's agile enough quick enough to I think to succeed at the NFL level, being a center, being able to snap the ball and still get to his man. Also, he did run a pro style offense in Alabama, and from what I saw, it seemed like he can make all the checks at the line for the other linemen. So, wouldn't be surprised if he's in the first round. I would expect him to be. That's where Pittsburgh. That's what I was kind of alluding to. Pittsburgh might have a tough decision if he's sitting there. Depends on his medicals. I mean, he did tear his ACL, I believe. I think it was the national championship, or I think it was before the national championship. I think the semifinal.
Yeah.
Regardless, so, yeah, I mean, apparently he's out there doing cartwheels and bear crawls without a knee brace behind Mac Jones. So he must be progressing well. It seems like, and if he gets back to what he was, he'll definitely be a great pick for the first round. But other than that, another real first round guys I really want to mention. The only one, maybe Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame. All right, what I got from him is just he was just solid all around. Like he's not going to be, he's just a starter, which is not bad. I mean, many teams would just want a reliable tackle, and I feel like that's what he'll be. And I feel like he'll be a second round, third round pick once again. You know, maybe if the Bengals feel confident enough, maybe they grab him then, or maybe they go two tackles. Who knows? Or any other team that needs tackle. So just another player I'd like to name there. Also, Tevin Jenkins, really raw from Oklahoma State. Big dude. I forget his measurables, but he's like a rawer Mekhi Becton for me. Because I remember I loved Mekhi Becton last year, but he's just a little bit rawer than Mekhi Becton. So any other names you wanted to mention to keep an eye on? Or
Not really.
once again,
The one thing
go ahead.
I was just going to say, the one thing in the draft that I think could happen is a potential run on the offensive lineman, because Penei Sewell to me is pretty much a lock for the top 8, because I think if he falls to where the Panthers are, I can't see them passing on him.
Or even the
But
Lions.
even then,
I mean, they're in rebuild mode.
yeah, exactly that.
Get a tackle. Don't
Which is
worry about
why
that ever again for 5
Right,
years.
which is why I say at most top 8, because I think Panthers take him. I think the Lions take him. I mean, even the Dolphins, I don't think they will, because they've taken offensive linemen recently, but they could take him. The Bengals should take him. Like it's, yeah. I mean, he's going to go that early. I wouldn't be surprised if Rashawn Slater, he's probably in the top 12. I wouldn't be surprised if Darrisaw is probably in that top 15. I don't know the exact order of those two guys, but I could see all three of them going top 15 for sure. And if that happens, then that there's probably another one or two offensive linemen that are getting taken in that first round that we didn't even include in our top 3.
Yeah. So
Well, unless whatever the guy you had at number 3, Greg Little, what was it?
sorry, I got to pull up. It's Walker Little.
Walker Little.
Greg Little.
Yeah,
Greg Little is a player. He's on the Panthers. But solid tackle too. But anyway, yeah. So I do agree. I mean, especially we saw it last year with the tackles. I mean, first one was Andrew Thomas at 4, but then we saw that run. I think it started with I forgot the order, but it's like Becton, and then Jedrick Wills went to Cleveland, and then shortly after Tristan Wirfs was taken. So we saw that run last year. It was like 3 within 4 picks at least, or something like that. And it could easily happen.
And we saw multiple go in that first round after that. The Dolphins took
Austin Jackson from USC.
Yeah.
And then even the Saints went up and got their guard, Cesar Ruiz. So,
yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's very likely to happen, especially this year. I mean, I would say this year's class is as good or could be even better than last year's. It's very close. I mean, I feel like top-wise, I feel like, there's a sure number one, whereas last year is like, okay, do you like, some people liked Will, some people liked Becton, some people liked Worse. So, but this year I feel like there's more of a clear one. So, anyway,